Hi, Year 4. So, we are on to Chapter 7 of Journey to the River Sea. Now, I've had a quick flick through, and Chapter 7's quite a long one, so I've decided to split it roughly in half, just so it doesn't go on for too long, really. But I'll just get started. So, Moz is ready, and I hope you're ready as well. Chapter 7. For 2 days after the matinee, Maya was in disgrace. I couldn't believe my eyes, said Mrs. Carter, glaring at her over a dollop of macaroni cheese so solid that she was cutting it with a knife. A girl in my care, creeping out secretly, going backstage and looking like a ragamuffin. The girls told me they thought they'd seen you on the way out, but I didn't believe it. We told you, Mamma, said Beatrice, smirking. She's stuck on that actor boy with the bass voice. Then they both started doing imitations of Clovis, saying, "Will I have to stop being your little boy?" in a deep growly voice, and laughing. Oh, it was so funny. I thought I was going to die. At first, Maya had tried to defend Clovis and make them see what the mishap had meant to him, but soon she gave up. Making the twins imagine the feelings of anybody except themselves was a waste of time. Instead, Maya had to put up with Mrs. Carter's threats to send her back to England. Maya had told her that she'd gone to Manaus on a boat ferrying rubber down the river, and Mrs. Carter did not understand why she'd not been murdered and thrown overboard. As for Miss Minton, I'm afraid she really is not fit to have a charge of young girls. I shall have to replace her as soon as I can find someone suitable. In the evening, when Miss Minton came to hear her read, Maya said, "I'm not staying here without you. I shall write to Mr. Murray. I think you'll find that at the salary the Carters are paying me, it might take a little while to find someone else," said Miss Minton dryly. She picked up Maya's hairbrush. "Don't tell me you're not doing 100 strokes a night, because I don't believe it. I've told you again and again that you must look after your hair." She picked up the brush and brushed fiercely for a while, and then, "Do you want to go back, Maya? Back to England?" "I did," she said, thinking about it. "The twins are so awful, and there seemed to be no point in being here, shut up in this house. But not now. I don't want to go now, because I've seen that is there, what I thought was there." Miss Minton waited. "I mean, the forest, the river, the Amazon, everything I thought of before I came, and the people who live in it and know about it." Then she told Miss Minton about the boy who had taken her into Manaus. He didn't speak English, but he had such a listening face, and I couldn't believe he didn't understand everything I said. Oh, Minty, it was such a wonderful journey, like floating through a drowned forest. You can't believe it's the same world as the Carters live in." "It isn't," said Miss Minton. "People make their own worlds. I wish I could find him again. And then, will I find him again if they don't send me away?" "They won't send you away," said Miss Minton. Mrs. Carter was already waiting greedily for next month's allowance for Maya from the bank in Manaus. "However, it seems to me we must find a way of getting you out of doors." She wrinkled her formidable forehead. "I think a disease might be best. Yes, something that makes it necessary for you to go out and breathe fresh air. Even damp air, let me think. Or about pulmonary spasms." Maya stared at her. "I've never heard of them." "Well, no, I've just made them up. We'll tell Mrs. Carter that if your lungs get dry from the disinfectant indoors, you have spasms. You know what they are, don't you?" "Sort of twitchings and convulsions?" "Yes, convulsions will do. Mrs. Carter won't like them. But I may not always be able to go with you, so please understand that I am trusting you to stay close to the house and to be sensible, which you do not seem to have been." "Yes, I will, honestly." But she could try to make friends with the Indians in the huts. She could try to find out who sung that lullaby, and ask them about a person who'd whistled blow the wind southerly on her first night. They might even know who her rescuer had been, so that she could at least thank him properly. But Maya had not forgotten her promise to help Clovis. "He wants to stow away on a boat to England, but he's sure to be caught, don't you think?" she asked Miss Minton. "Certain to," said the governess. "Unfortunately, the next boat to England doesn't go for 2 weeks. Do you think Mr. Murray would be willing to pay his passage? He could take it out of my pocket money." "I doubt if you'd see any pocket money for the rest of your life if you did that." "But he might," persisted Maya. "Could I send him a cable? They don't take very long, do they? They sort of snake along the sea. He could arrange with the shipping company in Manaus for Clovis to pick up a ticket, couldn't he? My father was always doing things like that." He could," said Miss Minton, but she doubted very much whether Maya's guardian would trouble himself about a stranded actor. But she did not stand in Maya's way. Maya copied out a message to Mr. Murray and gave it to Mr. Carter to take to the post office with enough money to send it. Then she settled down to wait for a reply. Mrs. Carter was not pleased about the pulmonary spasms. She'd never heard of them and said so, and she did not want Maya wandering about outside by herself. I shall expect you to accompany her whenever possible, she said to Miss Minton, and to make up the lesson time with the twins out of your free periods. Miss Minton could have said, what free periods? But she didn't. But she was quite right in thinking that, while she could not bring herself to be nice to Maya, Mrs. Carter dreaded losing her. Since Maya came, they'd been able to pay the bill for the dressmaker, the piano lessons, and the dancing class. Next month, they might even be able to pay off some of the rubber gatherers. Not their full wages, but enough to stop them running back into the forest. So Maya was allowed to go outside for her midday break, and again after tea. She was not allowed to go out in the evening, but she went. Once she'd pushed back the heavy bolt on her door, she left it open. She was careful not to go too near the huts of the Indians without being asked, but when she met anyone she smiled and greeted them. Then, on the third night, she was walking along the river beside a grove of dyewood trees, when she saw a small shape run out into the darkness towards her. In the dusk she had no idea what it was, and for a moment she was frightened. There were so many animals still that she knew nothing about. Maya looked down and laughed. The strange animal was a baby. The baby she'd been seen carried by the Portuguese girl. It had only just escaped and was enjoying its freedom, but the river was nearby. Maya picked it up. The baby kicked and struggled, but she held it firmly and began to make her way back towards the huts. "Oh, shush," she said, "don't make such a fuss," and she began to hum the lullaby she'd heard the Indians singing. She didn't know the words, but the tune quietened down the baby, and he stopped wriggling and let his head fall against her shoulder. As she neared the middle hut, she saw 3 people standing outside the door, staring at her: Tapiy, Furo, and the old woman with long grey hair. Then Tapiy ran into the next hut, and the Portuguese girl, Conchita, came out and rushed up to Maya, seizing the baby and letting off a torrent of words. She'd left him asleep on his mat, and he must have woken when she was out the back getting water. He's a terror. He's wickedness beyond belief. Now that she'd handed the baby over, Maya turned to go, but this was not allowed. The silent sulkiness of the Carter servants had vanished. Tapiy let her into the hut. The old lady bought coffee and nuts. Fruit was offered and little cakes. A party was brewing up. "You sang 'em good," said the baby's mother, and nodded. "Where you learn our song?" "From my window," said Maya, pointing back towards the house, "but I don't know the words." It was the old woman, Lila, who was the singer, and she sang it now again for Maya. "Is it a lullaby?" she asked, pretending to go to sleep. And Lila said it was a song about love and pain, like so many songs, but she always sang babies to sleep with it. She'd been a nurse to many children, European ones also, she told her. They knew and understood far more English than they admitted to the Carters, and they spoke with their hands, their eyes. Maya met the little white dog, the parrot sat on her shoulder. They had a tame gecko who lived on a potted palm in the window, and every time her cup was empty or her plate, it was filled again. She'd never met such friendliness. These Indians lived the kind of life she'd imagined for the twins before she came. After that, she slipped in to see them whenever she could. The old lady, who was Furo's aunt, taught her other songs that the African slaves had brought over when they came to work in the sugar plantations, songs she'd learnt from her Portuguese employers when she was a nursemaid in Manaus. They showed her the end of the hut, the end hut, the one where the rubber gatherers had slept, but which now was empty, because the men had slipped back into the forest when Mr. Carter hadn't paid them for 3 whole months. But nobody knew the North Country tune she'd heard whistled on the first day, nor could they tell her anything about the Indian boy who had taken her to Manaus. There were many such boys on the river, they said, and Maya began to feel that she would never see her rescuer again. Okay, so it's not the end of chapter 7, but it's a nice break in there, so I hope you're enjoying it still, and I will upload the rest of chapter 7 tomorrow. Can't wait to find out what happens next. Have a good evening. Bye!